Here are the stories shaping the world this morning and why they matter. Across East and Southeast Asia, Typhoon Bavi is disrupting daily life from Japan to Taiwan, China, and the Philippines, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, landslides, evacuations, and major travel delays. Japan's meteorological agency placed Bavi north of Yonaguni Island at 5 p.m. Saturday, moving northwest at about 30 kilometers per hour. The Sakishima Islands were warned they could receive up to 150 millimeters of rain through noon Sunday. On Miyakojima, gusts in Harara reached about 154 kilometers per hour shortly after 10 a.m., strong enough to damage crops even where farmers had taken precautions. Mango growers on the island reported damage despite windbreak nets, a reminder that storms hit not just infrastructure, but livelihoods. Japan also reported high waves and more than 250 flight cancellations, including routes to and from Naha Airport, Kagoshima Airport, and remote island airports in Kagoshima Prefecture. For families, tourists, medical patients, and workers trying to move between islands, those cancellations mean missed appointments, delayed returns, and uncertainty. In Taiwan, officials said 87 people were injured across wide areas. Schools and offices in most parts of Taiwan were suspended, and flights between the main island and remote islands were canceled Saturday, with nearly all international flights expected to be canceled. More than 14,000 people were evacuated from high-risk mountainous areas, as forecasters warned that some places could see up to 1 meter of total rainfall. In China, more than 1.8 million people were evacuated as the storm moved toward the eastern city of Wenzhou. Those large-scale evacuations can be disruptive and stressful, especially for older residents, families with small children, and people who depend on daily wages, but they are also one of the clearest ways governments can reduce deaths when storms intensify. The heaviest human toll so far is being reported in the Philippines. Authorities said monsoon rains compounded by Bavi triggered landslides on Mindanao, killing 17 people and leaving 5 missing. Officials reported 10 deaths in Sarangani province and 6 in Lanao del Sur, and urged communities to stay alert for more landslides and flooding. For rescue workers and local officials, the immediate task is search, shelter, and road access. For families in exposed mountain areas, the challenge is finding safety without losing the homes, fields, and informal work that keep daily life going. Ukraine and Russia have traded another round of long-range strikes, with Russia launching a large overnight barrage across Ukraine, while Kyiv emphasized its own expanding ability to hit targets deep inside Russia. Ukraine's Air Force reported that Russia fired 6 ballistic missiles, 6 cruise missiles, and more than 120 drones in the overnight attack. Ukrainian officials said 11 locations were hit across the country, with damage reported in Kyiv and recovery efforts also underway in Odessa, Sumy, Kharkiv, and Chernihiv regions. Apartment buildings and offices were damaged, meaning the impact was felt not only on military infrastructure, but in places where people live, work, commute, and care for family members. Residents in Kyiv described one missile arriving before the air raid alert, followed by a second strike about 5 minutes later. That kind of timing deepens fear for ordinary people because it narrows the window between warning and impact. It also puts emergency responders, utility crews, and medical teams at added risk when they rush to damaged areas after an initial strike. The pressure on Ukraine's air defenses remains a central concern. Reporting from France 24 said Kyiv is critically low on munitions for Patriot air defense systems and has struggled over the past month to bring down ballistic missiles. For civilians, that shortage is not an abstract military problem. It can mean more nights in shelters, more damage to homes and energy systems, and more pressure on hospitals and city services. At the same time, President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukrainian forces had carried out strikes across Russia during the week, including in Omsk in western Siberia and Saratov in southern Russia. He said no Russian oil refinery is beyond the reach of Ukrainian weapons. Ukrainian military officials reported hitting 21 Russian targets. Russia's finance ministry said oil and gas revenues from January to June fell 22% year-on-year to about $47.5 billion, blaming lower oil prices. Ukraine's strategy is clearly aimed in part at Russia's war economy, including energy infrastructure that helps fund the invasion. The risk is that both sides keep widening the geography of the war, while civilians on both sides absorb the consequences. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Moscow is creating a wider security zone as Kyiv attempts to escalate the conflict. For now, the new morning reality for many Ukrainians is still recovery after strikes. Clearing glass, checking on neighbors, repairing power lines, and trying to keep schools, clinics, and workplaces functioning under threat. In the United States, transgender rights advocates are reassessing their legal strategy after another Supreme Court term that brought major setbacks. The Supreme Court upheld state bans on transgender athletes competing in girls' and women's sports. That followed recent rulings in which the court's conservative majority sided with Republican-led states on laws restricting gender-affirming care for minors and limiting the ability of transgender women and girls to play on teams matching their gender identity. The latest ruling left important legal questions unresolved, according to advocates following the case. That means future challenges are likely, but the path through the courts has become more difficult for LGBTQ rights groups that had long relied on constitutional and civil rights claims to protect transgender students, patients, and families. PBS interviewed Chase Strangio, co-director of the ACLU's LGBTQ and HIV project, who was identified as the first openly transgender attorney to argue before the U.S. Supreme Court. Strangio and other advocates are now looking at how to respond when the federal judiciary is less receptive than it was during earlier waves of LGBTQ rights litigation. The practical stakes are immediate. For transgender students, these cases affect whether they can join school sports, access supportive health care, use facilities consistent with their gender identity, and move through school without becoming the center of a political fight. For parents, they affect whether medical decisions made with doctors can be overridden by state law. For teachers, nurses, and counselors, they create uncertainty about how to support young people while staying within rapidly changing rules. The slightly broader lesson is that rights movements rarely depend on courts alone. Advocates are expected to keep bringing carefully chosen cases, but they are also turning more attention to state legislatures, school boards, medical associations, and community support systems. That shift reflects a harder legal environment, but also a recognition that the well-being of transgender people depends on more than one Supreme Court term. It depends on whether schools, clinics, families, and local governments choose safety, dignity, and evidence-based care. President Trump has removed the remaining members of the Election Assistance Commission, leaving the bipartisan federal agency without confirmed commissioners, while planning for the midterm elections is already underway. The Election Assistance Commission helps state and local officials administer elections and certify voting equipment. It is not the most visible part of the election system, but it plays an important technical role. It supports the local offices that recruit poll workers, maintain registration systems, test machines, and prepare for early voting, mail voting, and Election Day itself. 3 remaining commissioners have now left the agency: Democratic Chair Thomas Hicks, Democratic Commissioner Benjamin Hovland, and Republican Christy McCormick, who reportedly resigned under pressure. A 4th commissioner had already departed, meaning the EAC now has no confirmed commissioners. VoteBeat reported that the 2 dismissed commissioners received an email signed by someone from the White House telling them they were being pushed out. PBS said it had asked the White House for an explanation, but had not received one directly from the president in the reporting available this morning. The timing matters. Midterm election planning is not something that begins a few weeks before voting. Local election offices are already budgeting, testing equipment, training staff, securing polling places, and preparing for expected turnout. Many of those offices are small, underfunded, and staffed by workers who have faced harassment and political pressure in recent years. Removing all confirmed commissioners from the federal agency that supports them raises questions about continuity, oversight, and confidence. The EAC is bipartisan by design, because election administration depends on rules that voters across party lines can trust. When leadership is emptied out, state and local officials may still do their jobs, but they lose a layer of federal guidance and a forum for coordination. For voters, the immediate concern is not party advantage, but reliability. Whether registration systems work, whether voting machines are properly certified, whether polling places have enough staff, and whether results can be counted accurately and explained clearly. Those are basic democratic functions. The constructive response now will be transparency from the White House, urgency from Congress where confirmation is required, and continued support for the local election workers who carry the most direct responsibility for making voting possible. In Spain, firefighters are reporting progress against wildfires after winds eased and humidity rose, giving crews a badly needed opening after days of dangerous conditions. Authorities said the fires had ravaged parts of the country and claimed more lives in the south. Some victims were trying to flee by car and on foot, underscoring how quickly a wildfire can overtake roads, villages, and open countryside when wind and heat align. The change in weather has helped. Firefighters said the wind dying down overnight meant flames were no longer being fanned so aggressively across the landscape. Higher humidity also reduced the speed and intensity of fire behavior. Officials hoped slightly cooler temperatures and a change in wind direction would support containment efforts. Spain has also reinforced local responders with a military unit of about 260 additional men and women. Planes and helicopters resumed water drops in the early morning, giving ground crews more support as they work to hold lines and protect homes, farms, and roads. For residents in affected areas, the damage can be measured in more than hectares burned. Families may be returning to damaged houses, lost animals, ruined crops, and weeks or months of cleanup. Rural workers, including farm laborers, small business owners, and seasonal employees, can lose income even when their homes survive. Smoke can worsen health problems for older people, children, and those with asthma or heart conditions. The progress reported this morning is important, but officials remain cautious. Wildfires can flare again if heat rises or winds shift. Still, the easing conditions show why early warnings, evacuation routes, firefighting capacity, and climate adaptation all matter. Spain, like other countries facing more intense fire seasons, is not only fighting individual blazes, it is also confronting the need to manage forests, protect rural communities, support emergency workers, and prepare for a hotter, drier future without treating every summer as an isolated surprise. The United States has intensified strikes on Iran, targeting military bases, drone storage sites, and key infrastructure, while Iran has retaliated with drones against U.S. bases in the region. DW described the latest U.S. attacks as some of the most intense of the war. Defense analyst Brian Clark said the United States had ramped up the number of attacks over the previous couple of days, compared with the smaller-scale strikes that followed the signing of an MOU. President Trump wrote on social media that Iran had asked to continue talks and that the United States had agreed. But he also said Washington had told Iran, in no uncertain terms, that the ceasefire is over. That combination, military escalation alongside a stated willingness to keep talking, leaves the region in a tense and uncertain position. The targets reported this morning include military bases, drone storage sites, and key infrastructure. Iran's response, launching drones at U.S. bases in the region, points to the risk facing service members and civilians near those facilities. Even when strikes are described as limited or targeted, they can disrupt air travel, energy systems, shipping routes, and local economies. Families of deployed U.S. personnel are left waiting for updates. People living near bases in the region face the immediate fear of incoming drones or air defense fire. The diplomatic question now is whether any channel for talks can slow the cycle of retaliation. The fact that talks are still being mentioned matters because wars can widen when governments stop communicating entirely. But the end of the ceasefire, as described by President Trump, is a serious development. It raises the pressure on allies, regional governments, and international institutions to prevent the conflict from spreading further. A measured response would focus on protecting civilians, maintaining clear military communication to avoid miscalculation, and keeping negotiations alive even when trust is low. The alternative is a pattern in which each side answers one strike with another, and ordinary people, soldiers, aid workers, families near bases, and communities dependent on stable infrastructure pay the highest price. In Houston, a fatal shooting during an immigration enforcement operation is facing growing scrutiny after the Department of Homeland Security said the man killed was not the intended target. DHS identified the man as Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, a Mexican man who had lived in the United States for decades. According to a DHS official, officers were almost at the target's address when they saw a white van with someone who resembled the person they were seeking. Federal officials said an officer fired in self-defense after Salgado Araujo weaponized his vehicle, but PBS reported that officials provided no evidence in the available account to support that claim. A lawyer for 3 other men who were in the vehicle disputed the government's version and demanded an independent investigation. The lawyer said Salgado Araujo's only crime was fitting the description of another man, and said his client's accounts were extremely different from what ICE agents or the agency were saying. Federal officials had not released the name of the officer who opened fire. The case has renewed public concern about immigration enforcement tactics under the Trump administration. For immigrant communities, especially mixed-status families, operations like this can produce fear far beyond the people directly involved. Workers may be afraid to drive to job sites. Parents may worry about school drop-offs. People who have lived in a city for decades may feel suddenly vulnerable, even when they are not the focus of a specific operation. For law enforcement agencies, the central question is accountability. If the government uses armed officers in civilian neighborhoods, the public has a right to clear evidence, body camera policies where applicable, officer identification, and independent review when someone is killed. That is especially important when officials acknowledge that the dead man was not the intended target. For Salgado Araujo's family and for the other men in the van, the next step is not political rhetoric. It is answers. Why the vehicle was approached, what threat officers believed they faced, what evidence supports the official account, and whether any policies were violated. A fair investigation should protect due process for everyone involved, while recognizing that a life was lost in an operation that did not initially set out to find him. Cuba is facing another island-wide blackout, its second in 5 days, as a deepening fuel shortage and a fragile power grid continue to strain daily life. France 24 reported that traffic lights were out in Havana during the outage. Residents who had generators used them to charge phones and provide light while cooking. For those without generators, a blackout can mean spoiled food, unsafe intersections, interrupted water pumps, dark stairwells, and no reliable way to communicate with relatives. The outage was attributed to a deepening fuel shortage and Cuba's crumbling power grid. The strain is also being worsened by U.S. sanctions and an oil blockade imposed under Donald Trump that target Cuban leaders and numerous companies. Those measures are often framed as pressure on the government, but the effects reach ordinary people, especially when fuel, medicine, replacement parts, and power generation are already under stress. The healthcare system is one of the hardest hit areas. Sanctions and shortages have been described as affecting hospitals and clinics where staff face drug shortages and broken equipment. One healthcare worker said staff are always innovating and doing repair work themselves. That kind of improvisation can be a source of pride, but it is also a sign of a system forced to operate without basic supplies. For Cuban families, repeated blackouts reshape the day. People plan meals around uncertain electricity. Workers lose hours. Students struggle to study. Older residents and people with medical needs face added risk in heat and darkness. Small businesses that depend on refrigeration, lights, or card payments can lose income quickly. There are no simple fixes. Cuba's grid needs investment, maintenance, and fuel. Its government faces long-standing economic management challenges. U.S. policy also has real humanitarian consequences when broad pressure deepens shortages for civilians. The constructive path would include grid repair, expanded access to energy supplies, and humanitarian space for medicine and critical equipment, so that pressure on leaders does not become punishment for patients, workers, and families. Chinese President Xi Jinping has met North Korean Premier Pak Dae-sung in Beijing to mark the 65th anniversary of the China-North Korea Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation, and Mutual Assistance. The meeting took place at the Great Hall of the People. The treaty was signed 65 years ago on July 11th and includes a mutual defense commitment stating that if either party comes under armed attack, the other will provide military assistance. That clause gives the anniversary more significance than a ceremonial diplomatic visit. She emphasized the importance of the treaty and said China and North Korea should defend their sovereignty, security, and development interests. Pak said North Korean leader Kim Jong-un wants bilateral ties developed into the strongest strategic relationship. He also said Pyongyang firmly supports Beijing in safeguarding core interests, including on the Taiwan question. Pak was scheduled to remain in China through Sunday and attend an event marking the treaty anniversary. The visit comes at a time when regional security concerns remain high, including tensions around the Korean Peninsula, Taiwan, and the broader U.S.-China rivalry. For governments in the region, the message from Beijing and Pyongyang is one of strategic alignment. For ordinary people, the stakes are more practical. Families in South Korea, Japan, China, and North Korea live with the consequences of military signaling, sanctions, border controls, and the risk of miscalculation. In North Korea, where the state tightly controls information and economic life, deepening reliance on China can shape access to trade, food, fuel, and diplomatic protection. In China's northeast, cross-border stability affects local commerce and security planning. The anniversary also underscores how Cold War-era security arrangements still matter. A treaty signed in 1961 continues to influence decisions in 2026 because alliances, defense commitments, and regional rivalries do not disappear when ceremonies end. The hope is that diplomatic contact, even between governments with hardline positions, can create clearer channels of communication. In a region where misunderstanding can be dangerous, predictability and restraint are not small achievements. Follow for a Daily World brief. Sources are linked in the description. That's the world as Minerva saw it.